Heyo, Plaidman here. I was racking my brain to try and figure out things that I want to talk about. Obviously, it's close to the end of October. Not obviously. I don't know when you're going to watch this video. But it's the end of October. We're coming up on Remember, the 5th of November, the gunpowder treason and plot. I know of no reason why the gunpowder treason should ever be forgot. And for those of you who are not familiar with that reference, you should definitely watch V for Vendetta. One could argue it's probably one of the best comic movies made ever. It's riled with a lot of controversy and other things and production issues. I have the comic. I haven't read it. I know it's bad. It's weird because I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and comics arguably are easier to read than normal books, but for some reason I have like 3 of them now, and it just, the concept of like sitting down and reading them is hard. And that's kind of like a thing I want to talk about is you see TV shows or movies, or even if you delve into like affluent people and you're like, how do they fit so much stuff in their day? And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have people who are like, oh my God, I just have no time. I have no time to do anything. And it's a fascinating thing because technically each person has about 16. If they push it, they have 20 hours in a day. So the question is, what are you doing with all your time? And it's something that I think with a lot on a daily basis. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm wasting my time here. I'm wasting my time there. I'm wasting my time. And I don't know. I recently came to the conclusion that I have a problem with discipline. Internal discipline, like disciplining myself and making sure that I'm like, okay, this is what we're doing. This is the habits that we're establishing. This is what we're doing. Whereas my wife, I feel like when she wants, she has tremendous discipline to do what she wants, how she wants. So we are kind of other ends of the spectrum in that regard. That's not really what I want to talk about. I kind of want to talk about the state of things. The short version, I had a brief conversation with, or a debate, if you will, with someone on Facebook, and they posted a video of Dave Bautista basically saying Trump is an idiot and some other things. And some other guy said, oh, well, this is fake. Like it's AI generated content. It's not real. Obviously, it's real footage of Dave Bautista, but what he was saying might have been fake. I thought that was hilarious. And if it's true and it's fake, okay. But even still, considering Dave Bautista's stance, it seemed legit. But none of that really mattered because the nuts and bolts of it were, in my opinion, the only actual choice like red-blooded Americans, not to be mean to everyone else, but that's kind of how I feel actually to be mean to everyone else. The only choice for red-blooded Americans in 2024 for president is Donald Trump. And it's really frustrating to me when you get other people who are saying, no, don't vote Trump, vote Kamala Harris. One that came up recently was apparently Eminem and Obama and Oprah and all these other people are like, oh, and Taylor Swift. And here's my thing that I want to kind of illustrate to communicate who are those people? Like, Eminem was Slim Shady 10, 15, even 20 years ago. But is he that now? I don't know. Obama, one could, if you looked at what he was and what he did, what he actually did as a president, was not a very good president. He came in and the idea was, hey, America is going to be more like this. And in fact, in the 8 years that he was in office, America ended up being more diverse, or not diverse, but more there was more issues between the races than ever before. Now, one could say, oh, well, that's not the president's fault. But if you look at his policies and his decisions and his actions, it kind of was. And kind of is. So, in my opinion, here's the thing, and I don't have a solution. I think that there are people who are evil. There is a small segment of the population that is just evil. And they're just totally bad. All they want is power and control. And they don't care at all about anyone else other than their own power and control. Okay? Now, fortunately, that's a small segment of the population. But they tend to have a lot of control. Okay. And then you have the people who are kind of usually connected to them or listen to them. You know, all the people who listen to Rachel Maddow, those type of people. Not all those people. That's horrible. But whatever. You get people who are connected to evil and they get polluted by it. Okay? And it doesn't necessarily mean that they are inherently bad people. However, because of what they listen to and the world, like if you like dip yourself into a swamp all the time, eventually you're going to become a swamp monster. That's just what's going to happen. You will become a resident of the swamp. And not necessarily like Shrek. As wonderful as that would be, that'd be great. Because then all of the DC people would be like Shrek, which would be amazing. Because if you watch Shrek is like the most liberty, like, leave me alone, let me do what I want, I don't want your taxes, I don't want your this is my area, leave me alone. That would be amazing for American politics. But in fact, no, that's not what happens. If you live in the swamp, or you are associated with people who are like evil intention, you tend to justify or whatever. And it's so weird. I've thought about it, I've talked about it, and I'm like, okay, let me understand this. You have a person who's like, oh, the WHO is a good thing, or NATO is a good thing, or the Federal Reserve is a good thing. And initially, I'm like, either you don't know, either the person doesn't know, like they've done zero research and they're just ignorant and they just say things. Which is like, okay, you're the definition of a sheep, so fine. Or they do know and they're either benefiting or they think that they're going to be in on this like control thing. Or, it hurts my brain to think about it because it doesn't make any sense. I've talked to people who are very intelligent, very logical. Going back to this Facebook conversation, here's a guy who runs a small business. He makes custom meats for people and delivers them. Great. I think he's a good person. I haven't really been familiar with him for quite some time, so things change. I wasn't invited to his wedding. He wasn't invited to my wedding. I don't mean that in a mean way, just like indicative of how we're not really close. And he's like, yeah, no, Kamala's great, Trump's horrible. And I just don't understand. I'm like, in what? And I asked several times through, I switched it to private chat, through chat, like, hey, where are you getting your information from? And he never answered it. And every response seemed to be, Trump did this, Trump did this, Trump did this. And while I could answer every single response, I kept asking one simple question, which was like, okay, but where are you getting your information from? Because to me, I feel like that's important. I think that's significant. If a person is getting their information from a certain source, then I understand their reaction. But I have a problem in general with the situation we have in America, where we have people who are susceptible to effectively lies, mainstream lies. And they're just like, oh, well, this is this, and they allow it to like percolate in their system, and then they spout it online. And it's like, whoa, dude, did you check any of this stuff? Like, you think this thing and that's fine. You hear this thing and that's fine. Did you check the source? And they apparently they don't. And it's indicative of, on one hand, if you hearken back in the day when there was no technology and someone came through the town and they're like, the redcoats are coming, right? I'm using that to be silly. You would trust the person because at that time the trust was was a very high level, and it's not something that someone would make a joke of. And I would imagine that if some kid ran through town and did that, it wouldn't take very long for them to grab that kid and put him to justice. I'm not saying kill him, but like they would handle that and bring him to his father and be like, you raised a bad child. This is unacceptable. What are you going to do about it? It'd be a whole thing. And justifiably so. But right now with mainstream media, with legacy media, mainstream, but legacy media, they're allowed to say things that are just untrue, or they will dance around the truth, or they will say things like people close to Trump and then be like, oh, yeah, by close to Trump, we mean some homeless person 2 blocks away from Trump Tower, or people who are aware of how Trump thinks. I'm like, who's that? Oh, you're thinking it's his wife or his daughter or his son. No. It's not. It's some other person who like shook Donald Trump's hand 2 years ago and has never talked to him since. That's someone who might know who, and I don't know this. I don't know who they're using. And that's the point, is if you're not willing to say up front, hey, this is how Trump is feeling, then perhaps you shouldn't say how Trump's feeling. But the unfortunate thing is that you have certain parts of the media, the legacy media, that's buying into this BS of, oh, we can say these things, and you have a certain amount of people who will just do that, to just eat it. They're like, yeah, well, cool. And you also have, it's similar with everything. And you could do any sort of thing. Like in California, Newsom was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to do $1,000 for people. And there were people who voted for Newsom again, expecting the $1,000. So all it took was the lie that they would get $1,000 for them to be like, oh, I'll vote for him. So their vote was worth $1,000. And then I want to go the other way of, I have a good friend of mine who hasn't voted for a long time, and he's in his 50s, 60s maybe, and he's worked his ass off. He's got fingers that are this double my size because of his manual labor for years. And he served our country for 20 years in the Navy, and his perspective was like, why vote? It doesn't matter. And all of that is saddening to me. I feel like if someone is going to vote, voting should matter. I feel like we as civilians, as people, it's our responsibility to dictate what happens in the surrounding world around us, okay? You should care how your community is, how things are in general. And then beyond that, you should care about the state government and then the federal government. So that, starting with that, okay, great. You should also vote. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a public servant, but you should vote because your vote should matter. Now, in all fairness, one could make an argument that your vote doesn't matter. I disagree. I think it does. And I think that this lie that it doesn't has played into this, oh, cool, we'll handle it. And the problem with that is the people who say, we'll handle it, there's no checks and balances on them. And frankly, the people who aspire for those positions who say, we'll handle it, tend to be people who are either evil or evil adjacent, and they allow and vote in things that are not okay and not conducive to modern civilization. These are not things at all that any normal, sane person would be like, yeah, no, I agree with that. But then what happens is they allow this to happen, and then those people bring in laws or stuff, and then the normal person just votes on it. Like, why the F in California do we have a law that says that we have to pay 10 cents for every plastic bag? Why? That doesn't make any sense. Oh, but it's because of it's because of pollution. And I'm like, all right, why am I paying for it? Why? Why does every time I buy a bag, I have to pay 10 cents for the bag? It has been free for the last 20 odd years of my 25, 30 years of my existence. But the last 3, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, whatever, it's cost me 10 cents. And it's gotten so bad that I go to McDonald's, which I don't ever do, and then, I gotta pay 10 cents at McDonald's to get the bag to put my food in that I'm about to throw away. What? And then if I ask them, they're like, oh, do you not want the bag? And I'm like, well, how else would you give me my food? And they're like, oh, we'll just hand it to you individually. At this road, it'll be 10 cents per wrapper for your hamburger and 10 cents for the holder for your fries, on top of the actual cost of the fries. And mind you, the cost of the fries is already built into the thing. But because the government's got to get a tax. And I live in California where they have wasted, adding not like so much money and have continuously failed. So every time the government's like, I want more money to solve this problem. Well, they never explained the fact that, hey, last time we did this, you gave us more money and the problem just got worse. And then the time before, and 10, 20, 30 years of, hey, this is the problem, just give us more money, we'll solve it. So there are people who don't realize that, no, the problem isn't more money. Just like with poor people, right? Like, think about it with your personal accounts. Oh, hey, you know what would be nice if we won $1 million? Yeah, that'd be great. But why are your finances the way they are? The way they are is because you spend more money than you make. You don't save, you don't invest, and so therefore you're broke. Because if you saved money or invested, then you wouldn't be broke. Then you'd be great. You'd be affluent. And that's effectively the California economy, the American economy. It is ruled by people who either don't know basic economics, like don't know how to manage a checkbook, minimally, like they're just dumb, okay? Or probably, in fact, and I would say this with every major city in the United States, the actual fact is these people are bad. They do not have your interests at heart. They have their interests at heart. I think that most of these major cities, if not all, most of these major the politicians who are in these positions, they're trying to have control and power, which is evil. It's okay to be in control. That's totally fine. But when you are jonesing for it and you go out of your way to run a thing and get other people to donate hundreds of thousands of dollars for your election, which effectively means you owe them now. Like, you got all these people to give you money and now you owe them. Because most of these people are not getting money from like $10 here, $5 here. No, they're getting hundreds of thousands of dollars from a construction union or from this thing or from that thing or some other conglomerate. And now they're expected, when they're in office, even though they're getting paid a good amount of money, they owe favors to those people. And where are the checks and balances on that? Where is the, hey, governor, hey, mayor, what do you do all day? You're getting paid $100,000, $150,000, whatever the heck it is. What do you do all day? I want to see your breakdown. Hey, I got to do a drug test if I get a job. I want a drug test from you. Hey, did you show up hungover today? Because if I show up hungover or drunk, my boss was like, go home. You're done. Bye. So the boss of these politicians is us. And frankly, we're not doing our job. We need to start doing our job. This is a weird rant. I don't even know where to go with it. I'm just saying, as a plaid guy, as a plain dude who just works for a living, I have my own problems. I have to deal with my own stuff. My wife is my life. I love her to pieces. She's the boss. And when I upset her, I feel it. I feel it all day. All day. These people will make really bad mistakes. Like, look at any Kamala Harris interview. And I don't see her being like, oh, that was a bad idea. Whoops. I don't see it. Or the chick from, I think, Chicago, Lightfoot, and she looks like she's on meth or some other drug. And she looks like a bad version of a science experiment. And you're like, how? Okay, I'm not saying you have to be aesthetic to be in politics. It's fine. But like, what the F? Why? And here's the thing. They constantly are making choices and decisions that are bad for us. And there's never any real apology. They are not held to account. And I think that we as humans need to start holding to account the people that we put in office. Okay? Because it is our job to make sure that they do that. And if they refuse to do it, then it is our job to remove them from office. Okay? Like, just think about it. Just if there was a dude in a family and he's abusive, right? Eventually, ideally, he gets removed from that family. That's the correct solution. Is if he is abusive, physically abusive to his family, he should be removed from his family. Okay? If his actions, whether it's alcoholism, drugs, or just excessive consumerism or whatever, bad spending, whatever, eventually, like, maybe the government shouldn't remove him, but in theory, the wife should be like, okay, either you change what you're doing or I'm leaving. Because effectively, I'm on a drowning ship. And every resident, every citizen who is in a democratic city or a democratic state, held state, like where pretty much all of your public officials are Democrat, you are in a drowning ship. A ship on the sea that is punctured, hold, is drowning. So you have two options. Either you start pumping the water out, and then separately you got to patch up the holes, and then realize you need to kick your captain off because your captain failed at their job. They're totally horrible. Do not listen to them anymore. Just no. You're wrong. You failed. Boom. We have to patch up the ship. We have to drain the water just to get to so we're not drowning. And the longer it takes you as a citizen to realize that this is what's happening, the worse it'll be for you. And I'm sorry, I don't really have more advice. I will say this thing. I hope it doesn't come to this point. But I've run into some people, mostly in private, like on social media, who are like, no, things are fine. And I want to scream at them and be like, hey, no, they're not. And I've tried sometimes to go back and forth with them. Unfortunately, there's going to be a point where you can't really have those conversations anymore, because effectively, even though some of these people I've talked to are so smart, it's like way smarter than me. Like, okay, but you're wrong. So I don't care how intelligent you are. Your intelligence might be great, and that's why you're making a 6-figure income, whereas I'm not. I'm, not. But you're just wrong. So I don't care how much money you're making. You're wrong. I don't care where you went to college. I don't care about any of that stuff. You're wrong. And we need to realize that, hey, go back to your gut and trusting what works. People who run businesses. Hey, if you have a successful business, clearly you're doing something right. I may not like you as a person, but all I can say is that you're doing something right. You can clearly run a business, whereas you make more money than you spend. And you know how to handle people and your clients so that your people have money and they're employed and your clients get what they want, when they want, how they want it. That's a successful business. We should stop hiring people in public office who have always worked in public office. Like, I don't think Kamala Harris has ever had a normal job. Biden never had a normal job. Maybe we should stop having people have their occupation be public employment. Because that's not a real job. It's supposed to be like a secondary thing. And especially if their whole career has been this job. Anyhow, I love you all. This is way longer of a lecture than I intended. Talk to you soon. Bye. Plattman out.